Hello and welcome to my show, Could You Be More Specific? I am your host, Jonathan Steele, coming to you by the way of the Stay Woke podcast. And on this episode of Could You Be More Specific, I want to touch on Lebron James and his opening of his school in his hometown of Akron. I also want to do not a follow-up, but I also want to actually touch on Fallon Fox and some of the issues that are kind of concerning her in terms of her overall as an athlete. And but I'm gonna start first with LeBron. I know recently he just opened his I Promise school in his hometown of Akron, Ohio, and I know this is something that he's been working on for some years now. I know a lot of the things that have been surrounding him in regards to, not just his career in terms of what he is as a basketball player, but what he is also just as an individual figure. And I know there's been a lot of comparisons that have been made about him. But one of the things that I think is a good thing that is about him is that he does think a lot of others, and that kind of reflects in his style of play, but also on who he is as a person. And I know you guys have probably been hearing a lot of that in the news in terms of what his school's offering. I know his school offers, free tuition, free uniforms, free bicycle and helmets. It's job placements for their parents to also get further education. And they also get guaranteed tuition to the University of Akron for every student who graduates. Now, to be fair, Jalen Rose does have an academy. David Robinson has had a school. I believe Deion Sanders had a charter school at one point. So this has happened. But in comparison to, what they've done, I know out of all of them, I know Jalen Rose's one, his leadership academy has done very well in his hometown of Detroit. I don't know particularly for sure, but I don't know if it's been done as on this big of a scale just because of who LeBron James is and the amount of resources and access that he has that puts him in a position where he can make all these accommodations for these kids, especially when it comes to they have longer school days, they have breakfast, lunch and snacks, and then they also have a food pantry set up for families. So what he's really targeting, which is something that can also be used probably as a model to start to help other inner city communities, is addressing poverty with not just education, but resources that'll put you in a better position to kind of change your lives moving forward. And I know that's something that we've kind of touched on before in previous pods. And I know that's something that, nationally it gets talked about. I don't know how much gain sometimes it makes, especially it depends on what city and state that you're located in. But for him in the state of Ohio, which, is really the middle of America, this is a huge deal. And it's something that, obviously people are going to be tracking, so it's something like, hey, it'll be something to look at a year from now. And then after a year, then the mark will probably be like 5 years and then 10 years. And you're just going to be analyzing it incrementally about that. And I know for LeBron, I know he was in an interview. And I know the administration that we have currently was mentioned in regards to just the tone of America, the tone of our politics, and what's the state of affairs in terms of what's going on in our communities, especially. And obviously, there's a lot of division. And it was, we've dealt with polarization before. It was definitely polarized. President Obama was in office, obviously for different reasons, and a lot of that was racially motivated. Because if you just read and listen to rhetoric, that's where a lot of it stemmed from. Obviously that's now still there now, except for our president now is oftentimes leading the charge on kind of, saying that kind of stuff. So that definitely changes that in itself. And I know LeBron has been, very open about his feelings toward him, and LeBron has become more confident as years have gone on. And I think it's a good thing, but it's like people got to realize too, it's like people are at different state and times in terms of where they're at personally. And the person that he was at 21, 22 wasn't what he was going to be at, 27, 28. And now he's 33 and he'll be 34 in December. So it's been a lot of changes that have been, happening, not just for LeBron, but just for our country in general. And I think it's an interesting case study because of the fact that it's not a charter school. And it's not a private school either. And the fact that, he's being able to essentially do this where he's not just the face of it, but also at the forefront of using a lot of his leverage and his connections to be able to fully operate it. It says a lot about LeBron. I think unfairly, though, I know that Michael Jordan's been brought up into this, and I feel this way. Sometimes some people want to give publicly, and some people want to give quietly. I mean, it was the same reason why some people were upset, or some people picked at Drake for God's plan, because they're like, oh, well, he's just showcasing this because he's trying to show how good he is. But it's like, well, if he never talks about it, like how you guys attacked him, where he never talks much about race relations, then you say, well, he doesn't address that. So it's like you're kind of, gonna get cut either way if you do it publicly or private. From people close to Michael, and from what a lot of people have said, Michael is very charitable. He just prefers to do it very quietly. I remember it was a story where I think he gave $7 million to clinics in Charlotte of his own money. And that's not something that's going to get brought up a lot with Michael. Michael's built up such a mystique to him. I know he's kind of been hit unfairly with the whole Republicans buy shoes too. It's just mostly Michael's just tried to stay away from being involved in politics for the most part. But, years ago, he did a fundraiser, I believe, with David Stern for Obama's candidacy. And so, people, contribute and give in different ways. But I think for LeBron and what he's doing, I think it's definitely important for him to come this far in his career, to be opening a school, especially after hearing the comments that came from Laura Ingraham from Fox with the whole shut up and dribble thing. It's like, well, you would want to use them, and you, like a lot of people, you want to use athletes on causes that you care about. So if he was doing something for children's literacy or something that you agreed with, you would co-sign that. And you're saying, hey, this is what being a role model is all about. Now, you can't say you want them to be a role model, but then if they're a part of an issue that you don't feel is important to you, then they should just shut up about it. That's, pretty hypocritical and disingenuous. So those are just some of the things I wanted to say about LeBron in his school. I think it's definitely a tremendous achievement, and looking forward to hearing, the results and seeing how, things kind of improve in his city moving forward. I know it's a little bit different from now that he's officially a Laker, and how he's going to be able to navigate that. But those are just some of the things I wanted to address with him. I want to touch on Fallon Fox. Now, I came across this story. I had watched a clip on Joe Rogan's show, and she is the first open transgender athlete in MMA. And I know it was a bit of a controversy for her because some of the people that she has been fighting, a lot of people feel like, it's a bit of a disadvantage because of the fact that she's fighting other female competitors, and the fact that she's able to participate in women's events has kind of been a cause of concern. Now, I know Joe Rogan has been in strong opposition of that, and I know he got a lot of pushback on that. And one of the things I like a lot about Joe Rogan and his show is, even though I don't agree with him like a lot of people, I don't agree with anybody I like 100% all the time, but what I do like from the people that I like to listen to is whether or not it seems like they're coming from a sense of perspective. And I think picking at him about his concerns about this, especially in regards to fighting, is a little bit misinformed. Just watching the interview, and I know he was speaking at the time with another writer on the show. I'll have to get her name. Some of the stuff she states in the interview is actually really interesting and fascinating too. But what he said was actually, something to think about. It's like, hey, if someone spent the first 26, 28 years of their life being a man, and then they transition to now becoming a woman, and they've been taking estrogen for 2 years, and then they fight a woman, it's like, it's still an unfair advantage. That person still has an abnormal amount of testosterone in comparison to other women, because if that same woman was tested and she had anywhere near the testosterone levels of her opponent, she would get suspended. And what a lot of people don't know from a scientific standpoint is that it maintains your bone density. So that's something that you have to really look at, that, especially in athletics. And not all of them are one and the same. And I think that's something that, the transgender community has to partner with GLAAD and working with women's groups on that not everything is the same. All of us are in groups where, we're dealing with certain forms of discrimination, and they're all based and rooted in different categories. So, one of the things I also thought was kind of interesting in that conversation was that the comparisons that was being brought up is that, if you have a male son that exhibits any female tendencies, well, then maybe he wasn't born to be a man, he was born to be a girl, so you just transition him to that. And then you kind of start wondering, is that anti-female in a way? Because what's fascinating about that conversation when I was mentioning is like, wow, well, it's like if we both have both our parents and we're both seeing our mother and fathers around us, or images of men and women in our lives, whether they're your grandmother, your uncles, or your aunts, you're going to inherit, by definition, their tendencies. And not all of them are just tendencies or stereotypes based off the gender. It's just based off of what you're seeing around you. And that was something that was really fascinating about that interview, because if I have a daughter and she has certain traits and qualities that you could say are that are similar to men in certain aspects, does that automatically mean she's no longer a girl, that she was meant to be a boy? And are you saying that then it's anti-female for her to be who she is as a woman, and instead of her just transitioning and being a man? I thought that was a very fascinating clip to have, because like a lot of people, we all have certain traits and mannerisms that mirror men and women of all likes a lot of times. And that's something to kind of think about moving forward. And I know with Fallon, and listen, the fact that she's been allowed to compete is, obviously was decided by people that work in MMA and that are part of the mixed martial arts community. But Joe Rogan is someone that really is invested in the UFC and really interested in and really invested, and it's very knowledgeable about that. For some of the fights that he says he watched, where he says it was literally like watching some of the fights that she was in, a man physically assault a woman, essentially. And the fact that, the main argument as to why he shouldn't say that was that she was taking estrogen for 2 years in comparison to that. And it's just, that's not the same thing. So that's something those are just some of the things I wanted to touch on with that. I definitely want to follow up on this story going forward, because I really thought their conversation was very fascinating, and I think it's worth continuing to build and talk upon. I want to thank you guys for listening to my show. I want to thank D for all the work that he's done. I'm looking forward to doing more of these in the future. Definitely become a patron, so definitely like, share, and follow. Thank you guys for so much. I'm looking forward to doing many more of these. I'm definitely going to try and cover some more categories and more aspects of, just news in general that I'm fascinated in. And hopefully we can kind of continue to keep a dialogue and a discussion. Thanks again. My name is Jonathan Steele. Thank you for listening to Could You Be More Specific? Look for us on the Stay Woke podcast. I hope you guys have a really good one. Be safe for sure. Okay. Bye.